Hello, Leo Risings. Welcome to your monthly zodiac reading for the month of September 2025. We are stepping into eclipse season, but unless you have prominent placements in Virgo or Pisces, or unless you have prominent mutable placements, you might still see some waves of this energy coming towards you. But again, unless you have some of these prominent placements, I'm not going to say not worry about it, but I would not just be mindful when you're listening to people online or when you're listening to other astrologers. Some people do have the tendency to sensationalize these eclipses. So just be mindful of that when you're listening to things. As always, we will pull an overall energy theme for the month. We will pull tarot for each week. We will clarify that with more tarot, as well as discuss the astrological transits and then wrap it up with some additional oracle guidance. So let's see what Leo risings need to know for the month of September 2025. Your commitment is being tested. So whether this is a relationship, whether this is a creative project, whether this is with your career or family, or even just your path of self-growth in some way, your commitment to this path is going to be tested this month. So just be mindful. When I hear like commitment, my immediate inclination was to the seventh house, which is where our relationships reside, our intimate relationships, our interpersonal relationships, as well as like contracts, business contracts, romantic, long-term romantic commitments. That immediately is what sprang to mind, but we'll see what the tarot has to say. So let's see. What can we expect? What can Leo risings expect each week for the month of September 2025? Here in the first week, the Three of Swords in reverse. So the Three of Swords in reverse can represent kind of like accepting a sense of loss, accepting, almost feels like also a sense of disappointment, but accepting a sense of loss or even a sense of separation in some way. The King of Cups here in the second week, this is lovely. So the King of Cups is operating from a very emotionally balanced place. We see here the water in the tarot represents emotions, and in the background, these emotions, these waves are crashing against the shore. The boat is trying to navigate these very rocky waves. You know, you've got this large whale in the background who's jumping. Like, it's a very kind of chaotic type of background, but the waves are not overtaking his throne, which symbolizes that his emotions are not overtaking him. And even though there's a lot of emotions around him, he is completely sovereign in his presence. So the emotions of others are not overtaking him. The emotions of the world are not overtaking him. He is also very much a heart-led leader. He's leading from a very intuitive, a very empathetic, and a very compassionate space. But again, he is completely sovereign, right? So that's kind of what is going to, that's the main theme of the second week. Here in the third week, the Ten of Swords in reverse. So this can represent a sense of closure, right? I am finally done with either a mental sense of torture. I am done with this kind of self-betrayal even, right? Because swords represents the mind. So the mind can be our worst enemy. Our own thoughts, our subconscious, our own thoughts can be what really sabotages us the most. Our fears can be what sabotages us the most. So this is kind of like, I'm done with this mental narrative. I am done with this mental self-sabotage. And it can quite literally be if you've recently gone through a separation, or if you've recently experienced some kind of betrayal. You could even be trying to accept that sense of betrayal and that sense of loss and disappointment, and really move on and kind of come from a more compassionate place. So, but the Ten of Swords in reverse represents a sense of closure and just being done. I'm done with a certain thing. And again, it's typically in our mind, thoughts that keep repeating. And then here we have the moon in reverse. Okay, so the week of the new moon solar eclipse in Virgo, you've got the moon in reverse. So this could be, the energy of that week could be triggering a lot of fears, could be triggering a lot of anxiety, maybe even insomnia, sleeplessness. But there's a need to surrender to the unknown. You can't control everything. You can't predict everything. And there are some outcomes that are going to occur that are literally just out of your hands. And there's a need to kind of accept that whatever path you're on, things are going to happen as exactly as they're meant to. Okay. Here in the first week, we've got Saturn retrograding back into the sign of Pisces. This will happen this will be at a 0 degree. Saturn will retrograde back there and will be there in retrograde, or no, he won't be there. He's going to be retrograde, but he will not transition back into Aries until like February 2026. So we're going to be dealing with Saturn in Pisces for a little while. For you guys, Pisces sits in your 8th house. This is your house of transformation. So it could be that it's not going to be quite like it was. This sense of transformation, Saturn being in there, is not going to be quite like it was the last time Saturn was there, just because the transits are not the same that they were probably, several months ago. So it's not going to quite be the same, but it is going to provide you this sense of this opportunity to really accept, like I said, a sense of loss, or come to terms with some sort of loss or heartache. This is also the week that on the 2nd, Mercury will move into the sign of Virgo. Mercury is Virgo's ruler, so he's very comfortable there, which means he'll be operating at its full capacity. Mercury is thoughts, ideas, communication, and messages. So our ability to communicate, our ability to think could take on a much more organized tone. This is in your 2nd house. So this is your house of money, financial assets, material possessions, self-value, and even your belief systems, right? The 2nd house governs what we find valuable. So when you're looking at something, Virgo, the lens in which you're looking at what you value has kind of like a Virgoan tone to it, right? It's like, how practical is this? How much do I value this thing or this person or this material possession? So Virgo, it's almost like money for you guys can just be a very practical thing. It's almost like a necessary evil. You need money to survive in the world. That's just kind of how you look at money, and that's how you look at material possessions. On the 6th, Uranus is going to go retrograde within the sign of Gemini. Uranus is an outer planet, so we see these themes play out more so on the collective stage versus a personal stage, unless you actually have Uranus in Gemini, which I'm pretty sure most of us do not. But unless you actually have this transit or something aspecting this transit, we're going to see this collectively play out. But Gemini for you guys sits in your, where is it? In your 11th house. This is your future. So it could be that maybe how you're looking at the future has kind of shifted. How you've looked at friends and social circles has kind of shifted. And even your views on humanitarianism and how we contribute to the collective is shifting and changing during this time based upon probably what is happening collectively. Right now, I think this might have more to do with Saturn's retrograde into Pisces here in this first week. Here in the 2nd week, this is the week that we will experience the full moon lunar eclipse within the sign of Pisces. Again, this is going to be hitting your 8th house. This is not an easy house for you guys. This is not an easy house to have a eclipse occur in. The 8th house is our transformative house. It's where the most intimate and personal details of our lives are what truly transform us, right? So this is shared resources. This is intimacy. This is inheritances. This is sex, death, the occult, very taboo subjects, like things you're not going to bring up at a tea party, are the things that exist in the 8th house, right? So you guys, with this full moon lunar eclipse, full moons are a buildup of energy, and they're kind of the manifestation of this buildup. If your commitment is being tested, if your commitment to forgiveness is being tested at this time, if your commitment to compassion for another person is being tested at this time, that's kind of the feeling that I'm getting. So your commitment to stay emotionally sovereign and almost to rise above your emotions is what's really being tested. But this full moon lunar eclipse is going to kind of bring that to a head. And it could be that it's almost like you're seeing this from a higher vantage point. Not in a way that's detached because the emotions are still there, but like I said, in a way where you finally reach a point where you do not let these things overtake you, which is really nice. And lunar eclipses, again, full moons kind of are this peak. It's like the mountaintop right before you go back down the other side. Right before this moment of release, this moment of tension becomes a sense of release. That's why you're kind of like sitting there. You're seeing things from a very specific vantage point, and it's actually helping you in the long run. So that's really nice. That's happening on the 7th. On the 13th, we will have a Sun-Mercury cazimi within the sign of Virgo. Again, Virgo is your 2nd house, money, finances, material possessions. The cazimi, so anytime we have a cazimi, it means that a planet is sitting right next to the sun. They're literally on top of one another. And the sun's energy is actually amplifying the themes of that planet. So with it being Mercury, this is like bouts of clarity. This is clear communication, clear thinking, and clear focus. Okay. Here in the 3rd week, like I said, the 10 of Swords in reverse, allowing maybe this sense of betrayal and hurt to just be done. Or like it could be a certain way of thinking to be completely done with something. This is the week that Mercury will move into the sign of Libra. Again, Mercury is thoughts, ideas, communication, and it's moving into your 3rd house. So Mercury moving into your 3rd house, you actually could become quite clear and maybe even a little diplomatic with how you communicate. Libra is the sign that's known as the mediator. They are the social butterfly. But overall, Libra tries to keep their sense of communication in a very balanced way. So with Mercury moving into the sign of Libra, this could actually really help you no longer maybe allow maybe if there's been a sense of betrayal, there's been a sense of hurt that maybe you've been carrying and holding on to. It's actually, you're going to be able to let that go and speak to people in a way that is just very clear and direct. So that's kind of nice, actually. That's really beautiful. This is also the week that Venus moves into the sign of Virgo. So your 2nd house of money could get an uptick because Venus also governs things like money and what it is that we value. So your material possessions could also see just an uptick. Maybe you receive a new piece of furniture. Maybe you decide to redecorate your home. Maybe you just see an increase in finances overall. So that's really nice too. Here in the 3rd week, this is the week that we experience the new moon solar eclipse within the sign of Virgo. So again, Virgo is your 2nd house. This is the 2nd new moon to occur in this sign. So this makes it a really special event, truthfully. And it's also happening at the 29th degree, which is what we call a critical degree. And this degree particularly represents endings. Something is coming to an end. This new moon is a new beginning. And these new beginnings are kind of incited with truths or a sense of clarity that comes forward. That's happening on the 21st. And again, it's hitting your 2nd house of money, material possessions, and finances. Also, on the 22nd, Mars, the planet of action, aggression, assertion, desire, is moving into the sign of Scorpio. Mars is at home here because it's traditionally one of his signs. So it's kind of like his 2nd home. He's very at home here. He's very comfortable here, and he operates very well here. He operates to his fullest capacity here. This is your 4th house. So when it comes to almost like your sense of feeling at home, you could actually feel not quite at home. With this card in reverse, that's kind of the impression that I'm getting. Your physical home almost doesn't feel like home anymore. Your sense of home may feel very, very different than what it has felt in the past, or what that you have even thought it has felt. And it could, things could feel very uncertain, right? So again, the moon is here to be like, you need to surrender. You need to surrender control, listen to your intuition, listen to your dreams. That is what you need to be focusing on, listening to your intuition, listening to your dreams, and recognizing that the path that you're on, everything will work out exactly as it's meant to. So there's no need for you to be afraid. Okay? Scorpio, like I said, sits in your fourth house. And then on the same day, Libra season begins. Libra, anytime we shift into a new astrological season, the themes and qualities of that sign begin to take center stage. Like the sun is amplifying and shining light on those themes and qualities. So your Libra house is going to be a focus. That, again, is going to be your house of communication and how you process information. But this is also when we get to experience the fall equinox as well. So we kick off fall during that time. Let's see. Let's see what clarifying messages we can receive. What other information do Leo risings need to know? So here in the first week, the Three of Swords in reverse, the Eight of Cups in reverse, you could be going back and needing to, make an apology. If you've accepted this sense of loss or this sense of heartache with the Eight of Cups, it feels like going back to make an apology, or at least going back to revisit a conversation. Either tell that I forgive you. I understand. I forgive you. Does not mean that absolves this other individual of needing to take accountability, but it does mean that you've like I said, it's almost like you've risen above the emotional storm that this pain has caused. And you're now able to go back and to revisit this from a different standpoint, from a different vantage point, right? But the Eight of Cups really does mean that maybe emotionally you're going, and maybe even after a separation, after a sense of heartache, you're having to go back and revisit it. Maybe emotionally you're still hanging on to it in some way, and that maybe why this closure is needed. You're tired. You've been fighting for something for a very long time with the Nine of Wands. You've been fighting for something. You've been wanting to fight for something, but you are tired and you're exhausted and you are on the point. You're like, I am ready to give up. Like, I can't keep holding on to this heartache. I can't keep holding on to this heartache. I can't keep mentally and emotionally going back to this day in and day out. And the Nine of Wands can also represent letting your guard down. You're like, I'm letting this go. I'm done. I can't keep going back to it. I need to let this go. And really allowing yourself to let your guard down in a way. This really is like a huge week for a sense of acceptance for things that have occurred, for, like I said, emotional upsets or a sense of heartache and loss that have already occurred. And you're really ready maybe to let your guard down and just allow yourself to move past it and to really let it go, which is why here in this next week, we've got the King of Cups, the Moon direct. So for some of you, if you're going back to revisit an old heartache and you're like, maybe you just need, like I said, that sense of closure. And you're like, I'm telling this person exactly how I feel because I've accepted it, but I need to let it go. I need to let my guard down. It could be that the individual appears to be the King of Cups. They appear to like maybe take your words and to actually listen to them and to hold them close to their heart and to really hold space for what it is that you want to say. But the moon is here, and the moon can represent that not everything is what it seems. And that maybe the trials and the experiences that you've experienced with this person, they're not quite over. You're still potentially going to have to come up against obstacles. And it could be that you even doubt that you're going to be able to overcome these obstacles with this person. And that could be what, again, the moon is saying. Like, you've kind of come into this place of acceptance of the reality of the situation. And so, you, again, the emotions of the situation are no longer overtaking you. You recognize the truth. You see the reality of the situation, even if that person is trying to paint it as something different. And it's almost like there's this sense of underlying, just a deep, it's radical acceptance. That's what I'm looking for. It's like this deep sense of radical acceptance. You understand, you see this person for who they are. You accept them for who they are. Maybe even you love them for who they are. But you're now at a place where you're having to radically accept who they are. And it could even feel like there is some doubt that you could come to a sense of compromise, because the Five of Wands in reverse, I just heard the word compromise. So when there's a lot of tension, when you're like consistently fighting, feeling like you are fighting a lot of obstacles, your pride could be hurt. It could feel like a sense of humility even. You are just humbly accepting this position. You're humbly accepting what has occurred. And it feels like maybe it feels like surrender, humility, and like I said, just a radical acceptance of what has occurred and what could still potentially occur. But in doing so, it actually allows you to close the book on this. That's kind of what this full moon lunar eclipse, I think, is bringing for you in Pisces, is just this sense of radical acceptance and this sense of, I don't think it's numb. Again, I don't think it's numbness, because the King of Cups is direct. It's almost just like this sense of sovereignty. You no longer need to be, you're no longer in a position to be overtaken or shocked by these emotions that come at you, because you've just accepted that things are the way they are, and all you can do is move forward. And that's what leads us here to this third week, this sense of closure with the Ten of Swords in reverse, Judgment, and the Tower. In doing so, in this like deep sense of radical acceptance, it completely shifts how you see the world. Again, this is the week where Mercury moves into the sign of Libra. So this could bring in a lot of clarity, a lot of deep understanding, and maybe even shift how you communicate with someone. But we have Judgment here. Judgment is hearing this call, feeling this pull, and maybe even making a choice, making a judgment call that, you know what, I'm just done. I am just done. This is what it is. I forgive you. I accept that this is what it is, but I'm not going to keep doing it. I'm not going to keep doing it. And as a result, you being done, you're listening to that call, that drive. I don't want to say that drive, because it doesn't feel like fire energy, but you're listening to that call, and that call could be telling you like, look, you're done. It's time to put this behind you. It's time to put this whole chapter behind you. Whether that is through forgiveness and acceptance, or whether that is through walking away, it is time to put this behind you. Here you've got the Tower, and that completely, and it may be something you never ever thought you would think. I never ever thought I would think, or it's a conversation with Mercury moving into Libra that completely shifts the entire foundation of what it is that maybe you and these other relationships stand on. And then here we have in the last week, this is where we've got the moon in reverse, a sense of fear, a sense of surrendering to the unknown. The King of Wands and the Ten of Cups. So here's the thing. If you are in a committed relationship, because like I said at the beginning, it says commitment, it immediately made me think of a committed relationship. Again, whether this is to a career, to your own self-development, to a particular person, or a creative endeavor, it doesn't quite feel that way. This feels much more personal. So it could even be with a sibling. It could be with a parent. It could be with a romantic partner, right? It does not feel like this is a creative endeavor. This does not feel like a collaborative effort. It feels deep. It feels much more personal. But it could be that, like, maybe you give this person an ultimatum. If this does not change, I'm going to do this. And then as a result, the new moon, there could be, again, this is your finances. Maybe you're afraid of what will happen financially if you make this choice, what will happen to your sense of self-worth if you choose to make this choice. But there's this fear of the unknown. There's this fear of surrendering to what it is that you can't see with the moon in reverse. And as a result, the King of Wands is here. You're not going to hold that boundary. And it's going to create this deep sense of unhappiness. Okay, it could create this deep sense of unhappiness and even create a deeper void between you and these interpersonal relationships. Again, whether that is with a sibling, whether that is with a parent, whether that is with a long-term romantic partner, let it resonate with you how it resonates. But that's what's coming through, is that this fear of the unknown could cause you to backtrack and not actually hold your boundary, which creates a deep sense of unhappiness within yourself. Or you could, even though you're scared, you could speak out of anger and it could cause a full-on separation. I don't necessarily feel like that's the case. I'm going to throw it out there because it's a collective reading. I genuinely feel like what's more likely to happen is there's this fear that comes up, and then an inability to hold that line, to hold that boundary, because the King of Wands, he's somebody who leads by example. He leads by example, and he stands true to his convictions. Almost like that, his word is his bond. If he doesn't have his word, he doesn't have anything, right? That's kind of the energy that he gives. He is someone who, when he says he's going to do something, he does it, right? He's got a lot of integrity. So when he's in reverse, he's unable to do that. Maybe it's out of frustration. Maybe it is out of just pure exhaustion. And he literally does not have the strength that is required of him to keep his word, or to even implement consequences to the boundaries that he set. Because that's the thing about boundaries. Everybody's like, oh, we need to set boundaries. Yes, you do. But you also need to have a plan in place in case those boundaries are not adhered to. Boundaries are no good if there are no consequences to those boundaries, right? So he's in a position where he's not really holding true to his word, and it can create this deep sense of unhappiness within these interpersonal relationships. Okay, let's get what oracle. Here, the first card that just like hopped out was Perfect Moments, and it almost feels blissful. almost like the perfect moment is not here in this reality. It's almost like you've just completely escaped reality for a moment. But this perfect moment. And again, it could be where you go back to revisit a conversation and you address how much maybe another person has hurt you. But you're willing to let your guard down. And maybe it does it. Maybe it really does create this very perfect moment between you and this other individual, whoever it is, right? And even if it's with yourself, you don't have to communicate the fact that you've completely accepted a situation for what it is. You don't have to communicate that, but you need to at least communicate it to you. Here in the second week, decluttering. This week completely feels like I said, radical acceptance and being just completely emotionally sovereign for what's going on. Maybe you even choose to declutter your home. You're like in this kind of state of complete acceptance. You kind of realize everything that's not necessary. You're like, I don't need these things. They don't bring peace. They don't connect to me in the way that they used to. I'm decluttering. And maybe some of you were choosing to move. She's got a box. I don't know why that just popped up, but maybe you're just choosing to move. I just imagine somebody like coming into this space of radical acceptance, and just like gathering up their things and just leaving. But it definitely feels like you're looking at your life and you're like, this is no longer necessary. I don't need this. This is no longer necessary. It's like you're about to Marie Kondo your life. If it doesn't bring me joy, it's gone. Disconnect. Here with Judgment in the Tower, you could be receiving this real deep call to completely just disconnect again, whether that is with you and a different person, whether that is you in social media. Maybe you just need time to yourself to process everything that's been happening, the changes that you guys have been going through. You're definitely maybe needing time to process, and that could require you to completely disconnect. Maybe just take some time to yourself. Because when we experience huge transformations, which is what's happening in your life, again, the your eighth house is being impacted, not only with Saturn just leaving there, but now going back. And also with the eclipses happening, you're having to really reevaluate everything that has happened. I shouldn't say reevaluate. You're just having to really come to a place of acceptance. And it's almost like integration. I just need time to myself to see how committed I am to continuing to move forward. If things are not going to change, how committed am I to my journey? How committed am I to my boundaries? How committed am I to my new life? How committed am I to this relationship? How committed am I to my self-growth? And you've been going through a lot of transformations, and you just need time to accept that, to come to terms with that, and to really to learn how it feels in this new skin is kind of what's coming up. It's the only way I know how to describe it. The best of you. Even though this energy here doesn't seem quite like it, it could be that you feel like what is best. It's almost like not the best of you, the best for you. Doing what is best for you, whether that is staying where you are or choosing to walk away. It's almost like you're coming, like I said, I keep saying it, this sense of radical acceptance to commit to what is best for you. Okay, so this is a very powerful reading. I hope you guys have an incredible month. It is going to be challenging. Again, your commitment, it's like your commitment to yourself is what's being tested. Your commitment to your own transformation is what is being tested. Okay, so I truly hope this helped. I hope you guys have an incredible month, and we will see you next time.